by being neurodivergent and also like an Afro-Indigenous person. One of the things that comes up for me is kind of like how neurodivergence has been very helpful and how it shows up differently in the Black community versus how it does in white spaces. I'm also non-binary, and I realize there's a lot of overlap between neurodivergence and gender queerness and gender divergence or diversity. Um, and so I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. I know, I think like it just allows me to feel more of myself in a non-judgmental way. And I think culturally too, just that feeling, allowing myself to feel and be allows me to better connect with my culture mentally, physically, and spiritually as well.
How do you think the way that we talk about or think about neurodiversity differs between Black and white spaces or Indigenous and non-Indigenous spaces in your experience?
White spaces treat it, I mean, and some Black spaces still treat it like it's a problem that needs to be fixed and solved. But even then, I think like there's a category of Black people that are they don't know how to deal with like the medical terms. They don't know how to navigate it because they don't really see it as a problem because it's not. And it just feels like another case of like our existence being pathologized, which is also like fair. In white spaces, I feel like there's this mix between a lot of people, one acting like it's a death sentence almost, like, oh God, little Timmy has ADHD. I don't know what I'm gonna do. My life as a parent is over. What are you talking about? But I do think when it comes to discussions about neurodivergence, the loudest voices and the voices that are like upheld are white voices. And it's a very like neurodivergence is going to be very culturally specific too. Our neurodivergence isn't a hindrance because it's what helped us survive before living in like modern white supremacist post-capitalist society. So it's kind of the way I see it sometimes it's just like people that are better or like easier to adapt to a capitalist society versus people that are easier to adapt to just being human and letting themselves be. And you get categorized as weird and stuff, but it's a lot. Anyways, I think like there's a balance because we don't necessarily need to pathologize every single thing, especially when Black people have been harmed by that in the past. I mean, it's like, oh, your son's acting out. He has a defiance disorder. No, actually, you just thought he was talking back, and that's just the tone of his voice. Where it's like, oh, the slaves are crazy because they keep trying to escape. There's reasons why your community has problems with being diagnosed mentally because of the way it's been used to harm us. And that is completely fair. And this applies to every culture that has like spiritual beliefs. When you start talking about, oh yeah, the spirit said this, or I saw this, or I had this conversation, like a white supremacist Christian culture is always going to punish that. So the ways in which like our culture has been demonized as you're crazy because this can't happen, the spirits can't talk to you, these things, this and that, it's kind of like being told that you have schizophrenia. Not to say schizophrenia doesn't exist, because it does, and there can be an overlap between someone who's spiritually inclined and has schizophrenia, but there's still a difference between the two, and that's another way that like our existence and our culture has been used against us to punish us.
How have you reconfigured your own life to meet your own learning, emotional, or sensory needs?
One of the things that I think has been really helpful is feeling my feelings and not thinking through my feelings. Um, so like not not trying to analyze or evaluate what I'm feeling, just being like, where do I feel it? I feel it in my brain. I feel it in this part of my head, in my chest. Um, and then kind of identify what that like what emotion is associated with the feeling, because there's a difference between the two. Um, and then from there, if it feels appropriate to think, then I will. um, but sometimes like a feeling just needs to be felt in order to go away. And that's something that I'm learning, and it's making me a lot more mindful. It's making me a lot more aware. It's making me calmer in a lot of ways. Um, so that's been really helpful, because it'll be like, oh, I'm feeling really overwhelmed and overstimulated by playing this game. And I'm like, oh, that's because it's like hitting this one part of my brain. And I need an activity that's going to be a little more complex or hit something else, something a little more balanced right now, because I'm doing too much in this one area. And that helps me so much more, instead of just being like, I don't know what's wrong, and like screaming internally. I can feel so many things. I can feel like if I touch my cats, like I can feel what they're feeling, because their emotions are so loud. Like my cat was hungry and I was about to put her away, so I could leave, but she was sad. She was sad because she was hungry, and I was like, I have to put you down now so you can eat, because your sadness is so loud. Or just touching people. I avoid touching people when they're in a lot of pain, because then I start hurting. Even if they haven't mentioned that they're in pain, I'll touch them and be like, ow, okay. Nope, no touching. Nobody can touch me. You're in pain and it hurts. So I definitely never really quite fit in. So then I just found the place where I did actually fit. And there was a friend that I had who ran into a similar thing, where she was like, I feel like I just have to be like all these other people, and I don't feel like them at all. We don't think the same way. We don't see things the same way. And it's really isolating. And then I brought her to my house when I was living with 8 other queer, trans, autistic people. And she was like, you make me feel very normal. And then you took me to your house and I feel really normal, and realized there's a lot of people that are like me. And I'm like, you need to find more people that'll let you just be yourself. And it turns out a lot of these people are autistic.
Is there any piece of advice that you would give to people who are neurodivergent, people who are questioning whether or not they're neurodivergent, or like people who know neurodivergent people?
I think my advice would be, allow yourself to feel, allow yourself to just exist non-judgmentally. Like, it's not bad that you exist. Even if people around you are saying that you're lazy and that you're finding different ways to call you stupid, because they've decided that you don't operate the way they think you should. If you're someone who is a person of color and you're questioning and you're struggling to find assessment tools, or any like professionals that will actually assess you, find other neurodivergent people of color to talk to. Utilize those networks to get whatever tools and assessments are going to help you feel better. Like, just quite frankly, because there's also this idea of what it means to be neurodivergent. There's this idea of what it means to have ADHD or autism, and you get judged very differently for being a person of color, especially the darker your skin is, regardless of what race you are. So please look for people of color in the community that can help you.